guys going in that, so that'll be fun.
So the spring session's in the books, folks. In Tallahassee, we will run down what we all saw over the weekend, what we are to see this weekend at the NFL Draft in Detroit concerning Florida State football. And we're going in so many different directions, the past, the present, the future. And then, of course, it always is back to court as well as it was this past Monday. We got Georgitis. The Renegade Report is the place to be for Florida State football coverage on a regular basis. George, what's going on tonight?
Kind of back home from the spring game weekend. Me and Jen got out there along with, of course, Chris from Spear Addicts and James from Den Media Group. Had the big tailgate. Got to meet all kind of cool people, so that was a ton of fun. And as you alluded to, there's no rest for the wicked. As soon as you get back in town, Sunday night, I was up first thing Monday morning watching a hearing. The second hearing in the state of Florida was Monday. The first hearing that we had back, I don't want to get the date wrong, but it's been a couple weeks ago. Towards the end of March, we had our hearing here in Florida. And the only kind of part that the judge got through was the very first part of the case. He denied the motion to stay from the ACC, but he did not get to the motion to dismiss or to kind of rule on discovery. Well, in the other day's second court hearing, he got to the motion to dismiss. And unfortunately, from a Florida State perspective, we didn't get past that motion to dismiss to a motion to discovery because it was granted by the judge. That doesn't mean that the court case is thrown out, nothing like that. It's nothing like in North Carolina when the judge threw out fiduciary duty on Florida State's behalf from the ACC with prejudice. The ACC can never bring that up again. They can never refile, unless they go through some court of appeals. That's not the case here. Basically, what we have is just a 1 month delay. The judge gave Florida State 7 days, not including the weekend, to amend their filing, specifically the part about personal jurisdiction. And I won't get off too far in the weeds into there. But they have 7 days, like I said, not including the weekend. So they'll have till about next Wednesday to amend their filing. And then they'll give the ACC an additional 20 days to respond to that. That's unless they request additional time. So basically what you just have is, a 30-day delay in the case at minimum, which could obviously turn into longer. Should Florida State decide not to just adjust that single spot, they have, when they said this in the court, they withhold the right to kind of sharpen everything. They could change all the claims, add the claims. They, in essence, are getting a redo. They're able to go down there and they're filing a whole new lawsuit. So it's very interesting, just kind of delay. The judge also ordered that mediation at least initiate within 120 days of Monday's hearing. That doesn't mean they have to come to a settlement or anything like that, but some sort of mediation has to at least initiate in that time period. It was going to be 90 days had we got a ruling, had the motion to dismiss not been granted and we got a ruling on discovery. But since we didn't get that ruling on discovery, the judge added another 30 days. So we have 120 days, between the FSU and ACC to kind of intermediation. 120 days. Why is that kind of important? That takes you past that August 15th date when Florida State has to kind of put their name in and withdraw from the conference. So there's all kind of things. We could spend 3 hours talking on this. I don't want to go too long, but that's kind of the basics of where we are in the Florida case. May 2nd, there's a court date for the next one in North Carolina. But yeah, interesting stuff out there.
James, big game James Coleman, Den Media Group, of course, is the place to be for Florida State football coverage. James, I could ask you a specific question, but I don't want to pin you down. I want to let you go with whatever stood out to you most on Monday.
Par for the course again. I know I don't like knowing what I know about. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been through this. Mediation is actually mandated in the state of Florida anyway before you go to trial. So, the judge didn't really do. He didn't hide anything. In order to go to mediation, you have to continue to prep yourself. So there's still depositions. There's still all kinds of other different things that you kind of go so that you can lay out your case. So the 120 days is basically giving them the time to interview. To depose, get information, continue to get different documents. So again, all we're doing is continue to set the facts. But the one thing that's going to be interesting to note is there is a race to get it done. If mediation gets done in the state of Florida, then that basically cancels out North Carolina. That means you settle. So basically, it's a race to see who gets done first, and people are going to stall and delay. But at the end of the day, I have said this. This is I don't really see this going to trial, because the longer it plays out, and remember, there's still a case in Clemson. There's still another court case in North Carolina and another court case in South Carolina that still has to get done. The longer these drag out, the less likely ESPN is to make a deal. And they need to make that deal before February 2025 in order for that GOR to still be in place. So I think there's going to be a lot of saving face when it's all said and done. So that's kind of just but it was a lot. And I tell you what, man, I tried to listen to it. I was moving my grandmother into her assisted living facility. I had it on in my pocket, but I was falling asleep while I was moving stuff, man. Some of these attorneys, man, are not very entertaining. So
Definitely
they can use a little bit of seasoning in their voice, so we can because we gotta get through this.
Definitely wasn't an episode of Suits this time. It was a lot more just kind of going through the motions and a lot of legal jargon. And James is absolutely right. It's the race to the courthouse is over. Like he alluded to, it's all about kind of the race to get done now. We're talking to Doug Rohan. Me and James both have a bunch. Danielle Kelly. Who finishes first does matter here. That judgment is going to matter. I think the only thing that stands in the way of mediation, that, as he noted, is mandated in the state of Florida. Generally, you would like to have an order on the discovery and have those depositions and things that he's talking about, to provide the leverage for each side, and particularly for FSU's position. It would really be nice to have some things come out and have that on their side. And I really wonder, and how much of good faith are they going to enter that mediation with if the facts are as they are and everything's still redacted and things haven't come out. But within that 120 days, I'm sure some stuff will come out. And as he noted, there's dates that just keep coming up. I think the main thing take away from this case is that kind of the ability to get this thing done and for Florida State to be in the Big Ten by 2025 has kind of shrunk, or at least the ability to do it cheaply and not have to pay the full amount. So I've said all along that it's going to be 2026 at max, but hoping for 2025 and leaning 2025. There's one main takeaway from this. I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's 2026 and you end up playing that 2025 year, as ESPN does kind of have, 2025 and 2026 kind of sewed up under contract. There's some give and take there.
Well, like James, I've thought for a long, long time that this is going to be settled out of court because there's too much brand reputation at stake on the ESPN side, and there's too much inevitability that Florida State's going to make its way out of this league one way or the other. So once the ACC comes to grips with that, and maybe they already have, that they just want to settle with as much money as possible is their aim, and to make, probably in a vendetta, make Florida State look as bad as possible if there's any way that they can do that. So here's one takeaway, and you guys tell me if I'm correct on this. Did the judge, in a sense, say that Florida State was arguing its case and not arguing why we should take the next step within this process of moving this to the next phase? It seemed as though he said kind of there needs to be a reset here. You're not prepared for what you're supposed to be arguing in a hearing.
I'll be super quick. I've got a real kind of simple way to put how I took it. It really seemed like he was trying to lead Florida State down a path. It seems like on the face of Florida State's argument, hearing them argue their personal, jurisdiction argument, all these, it's all for home games. The ACC is in Florida way more than Florida is in North Carolina. He buys that. He's with them. But his issue is written out in the claims, in the precedents that Florida State noted, that it just wasn't in there. They did not have they did not have the stipulations. They did not provide the precedents to move forward, as you noted. Like he was trying to tell him, hey, this is kind of the way you need to go with respect to that, long arm of the law statute. And ACC or Florida State's lawyers, as you alluded to, they just weren't prepared to go there. So rather than go down that road and screw themselves over, they kind of just went with what they had and, okay, give us a chance to go redo it. So it's, the way I took it, it's just kind of a, I'm not having the word here, but whether you want to call it semantics or whatever, it's just in the way that their complaint was written up. They need to go in and add a few things, and they were kind of tied by what they put in there.
I mean, George basically put it the same way that I would figure it as well. So I mean, that's why they're gonna. The one thing I did see Doug basically said is when they amend they basically have an opportunity to rewrite the script again once they amend their complaint. So where the ACC did a bunch of amending before they went to court, this go around they actually went, saw what didn't work, and now you kind of go, or where you weren't prepared at, go amend it, and then when you come back to court, you'll have everything that you need to have.
Wonder if this might blow up, as much as the ACC fans are happy about this. James mentioned the case with Clemson, the case in North Carolina with Clemson and Florida State. There was an opportunity where Rush got up there and he said, look, if you guys want to, we will just add that one piece of precedent in there, that one piece of litigation to make this thing work. We'll just adjust personal litigation and we can be back in a week. Well, between the judge, and I forget the exact reason, but it was, no, you need the full 7 days without weekends. The ACC needs their 20 days to respond. There's going to be no ruling on discovery. I believe that was kind of the final straw there for Rush. He said, okay, well then if that's how it is, we've got the right, we can change any of it. So with that case in Clemson, with the 2 cases in North Carolina, Florida State has the ability to go back from scratch, as James said, sharpen all of those arguments. So, really curious to see how it changes. If they just go in there and fix that issue on personal jurisdiction, or if all of a sudden we see a case that's just sharpened down to the hilt and Florida State has all kind of new daggers in there. So very interesting to see, and can't wait for that next date for sure.
Based on our conversation the other day with Tony Siracusa, we brought him on after Monday's hearing. While it seems to be a race to the finish line in regards to in North Carolina federal court versus Florida federal court, that there is a scenario that may not be very likely, it probably isn't, but where they could rule that the ACC won in North Carolina, Florida State won in the state of Florida. Therefore, it's going to federal court and it's going to be at some neutral location. That still is a possibility.
And that still bodes well for Florida State. I mean, because again, because there's going to be Florida State is the only one who really has the reason to continue to push this. And they're going to, like, the AC, to me, this is why it's crazy. Like, you have to have this deal done by February. Like, this, and you're really fighting this. Even if you win, you will not win the damn, I can't even think of when the retrial. I mean, excuse me. You may win but the retrial will be pushed into 2025. So, like, you're going to lose because ESPN has told you. You got to wrap this up by February, man. That's when they're not going to extend it. And so they stand to lose everything. That's why I think in all of this is foolish. With the common sense part of it. Like, you stand to lose everything by trying to force a couple people to stay when you can actually get money and really solidify yourself as competing for that third spot with the Big 12. And when it comes to like the remaining conferences. So let them go. Let them try the SEC. Let them try the Big 10. That would be what my thoughts would be. But at the end of the day, this is a measuring contest. And I don't see a likely outcome where the ACC really wins. Like, okay, you win, but you still don't have anything. Like, you won nothing is kind of what it's looking like. And hey, if that's a win, then great. God bless them.
Yeah, I totally agree. In the beginning, we all kind of at length discussed the federal court option with Danielle, with Doug, with everybody, with Chris. Um, the closer and the farther we get into this thing, I think the kind of consensus is that that's less and less likely, and that the settlement just happens just with the length of time, what James was just alluding to. Just to get through the state court proceedings, to even get into a federal court, by the time you get there, kind of all those dates are going to be passed. We just found out today, our next hearing date, could possibly be after we find out on discovery, it could be on into August and September when that happens in Florida. So that's already past August 15th, already past June 30th. So all you have left is that February date. So I'm inclined that it doesn't happen in federal court, but yeah, it's very interesting to see. And it's one of these things we could sit here and talk about it all day, but at the end of the day, Florida State and Clemson, they're gone. ESPN knows that. I'm in total agreement. So it's like, I've said this before. It goes back to like a guy entering the 5th year or 4th year of his contract with all of his options. They're done. So what are you going to do as the New England Patriots? You going to, get the last year out of this guy, or are you going to trade him and try to get a 2nd round pick or something like that? That's where ESPN and the ACC are now. Do they want to take this to the wire and risk the whole thing collapsing, or do they want to get some kind of value out of FSU and just end this thing here? So we'll see.
You wonder, and this is the first time I've really thought of it this way. You guys have probably had this discussion at some point, but I haven't. That while all this is going on, you've got the SEC and you've got the Big Ten. Now, of course, they will further evaluate Florida State as a football brand. Not that they need to evaluate them, not that they need to have to be convinced that they're a property that they would want, each one of them. However, they're going to continue to play football. They're going to continue to be coached by a particular coach, most likely. They're going to continue to, nobody stays in exactly the same place. You either progress or you drop back and take steps backward. And it would be interesting to me to know what the Big Ten powers that be, the SEC powers that be. I have a pretty good handle on how they would evaluate Florida State. It's one of the best brands in the sport. There's less to really get a handle on than if we were talking about North Carolina. Then you've got a lot grayer area of, okay, is this a value? Is this a proposition that we want to add or not? Even though they seem to be on the plus side as well. But do you guys have any thoughts about the SEC and the Big Ten and how they probably are just, well, of course, the SEC is somewhat involved by connection to ESPN, but kind of, perceiving this whole situation and continuing to evaluate FSU?
I think one of the things that they're really assessing is how interesting and engaging this is to the general public. The big thing is, I think it's going to like everybody thinks that the SEC is going to try to make this as palatable so that because of the relationship with ESPN. But I think the Big Ten, again, is who I've always chosen, is chomping at the bit, because, again, this gives them a cross-country brand, a truly national brand where they can go in and dip in every market. So I just really find it interesting, especially, and it's going to be probably one of the talks of the town during a slow college football off season, like for especially those months of May and June.
Yeah, I think that's the main point. Instead of getting into the weeds of kind of, really looking at it, what it means, I think it's just kind of really obvious that it's the difference in, okay, Pensacola's got great cell service. What is one more 5G tower they're going to do? It might improve it a little bit. That's Florida State to the SEC, but you drop a 5G tower out in the middle of Idaho when there's, no cell service at all. You're adding 300, 400, 500 people that all of a sudden have cell service. That's what you get when you put FSU in the Big Ten. You open that pathway into that southeastern corridor of football, and there's no telling how many people are going to tune in. You obviously pick up the Florida State fan base, but you pick up that whole group of people who hate FSU as well. And you end up with just so many different national matchups that you just would not have outside of Rose Bowls and Sugar Bowls and things like that. Where FSU, man, they've got Alabama on the schedule. They just played LSU 2 years in a row. They play Florida every year. So just kind of what it's worth to the Big Ten, it just seems pretty obvious to me that that's where the value is. ESPN's value, as James mentioned, being that, and you mentioned they're just kind of being tied into the current grant of rights, and there being something they could work out there. But put all my money on the Big Ten and praying that's where we land. And I believe that's the plan. When you look at the medical facilities they're building, working towards AAU status and all those things, it just fits.
It would be fascinating. For as much as I don't like the way college football is going with all the realignment, I would love to reverse to 1985. That's not happening. So it does open up just incredible matchups. We're going to see them this fall with Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC. We're going to see them with Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA in the Big Ten matchups, as George outlined, that we would only see in the postseason. And Florida State, Ohio State, are you kidding me? Florida State, Michigan, Penn State, USC.
I forget about Penn State all the time when I'm naming all these teams. Like it's pretty ridiculous. Big Ten they weren't too far in edging up there close to the SEC as it was. You bring in all these extra powers and you add a Florida State, it would be very interesting. Also, we saw some numbers that came out, and I think Tony Altimore had said that they were old. But regardless, when you look at how close Florida State and UF are with kind of the money they bring in and what they're able to do, and obviously Florida State being kind of ahead of them on the field right now, once you add that, whether it be the SEC or the Big Ten to Florida State's name, it's going to be real fun to see how the kind of power shifts in state there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
James, either prior or following the ceremony, the graduation ceremony last weekend, did you see anything that really matters out of any of that?
A little bit. One of the things that did concern me was the drops. Not the contested passes, just some of the wide open drops. But this one I'm gonna go when George gets to talking, I'm gonna go show some exclusive on your channel, Mark, so that people can really understand. Especially, I know you're Miami guys. Everybody else listens to this. I say things I can back up. We ran 12 plays on offense. Like, that's not an exaggeration. That's like it is literally a showcase. Like, Peter Ward, phenomenal, great. I don't think he's even been an offensive coordinator on a high school level. Was the offensive coordinator for the spring game for one side. Travis Minor, who I got a chance to meet, was the offensive coordinator for the other side. Corey Simon was the defensive coordinator. Now, Corey is a pretty good politician in the state of Florida, but he's never called defense before. And Tommy Polley is a coach, but I'm not sure, how well he knows the intricacies of Adam Fuller's defense. So I'm saying this to say, like, people can say that their thing was vanilla. I literally have the offensive playbook for the spring game. It was 12 plays. It wasn't Mike Norvell trying to scheme up anything. So it was basically just seeing guys get out there and run. But I will say, seeing guys like, dang it, I forgot, Edwin Joseph. That was really good to see him. He was making some plays. And you saw plays to be made. I saw some runs. I was impressed with the running game more than I thought, especially when you talk about only having so many plays. For those to be able to pop, that was pretty interesting. So that would be my take, all in all, on it.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. The DBs are absolutely filthy on this team. Edwin Joseph was one of those guys that stood out that, like, really made a jump from last year. I agree with James. Like, the lack of kind of separation and things like that, I was fine with it. The kind of drops, the unforced errors and things, yeah, that hurts. I think, and again, that was exaggerated by just how good the DBs played across the board. I think we were talking about possible all ACC selections on this squad and where they might be. DB, I could put one of, all five of those guys could possibly be on one line of those. And when you look at that play sheet that James just put up there, exclusive content right here on the Voice of College Football, those DBs knew those 12 plays. And over half of them were running plays. So there was no scheming guys open like Mike Norvell normally will in these games. And I have 100% faith if we didn't add another wide receiver that he would scheme these guys open and we would be all right. But like James said, if you're open, you got to catch it. There's no excuse for those drops. And I'm sure we'll get into the portal later, but if there was one thing that stood out, maybe more so than going into the game, I'd really like to be able to look at possibly bringing in a wide receiver one, somebody who's just kind of that guy, as James likes to call, a jersey guy, somebody who we know what we're going to get come in and play. Looks like the guy out of Penn State is getting crystal ball to Auburn, so I don't know if it's him. I know he's the third best wide receiver in the portal this year, just like Keon Coleman was, but I don't think he's that level of player. So we'll see if that guy's yet to hit or if they pick him up. But outside of that, I was super happy with DJU, kind of how he looked within the offense, where he put the ball. I was super happy with all that. The offensive line is kind of as advertised. It's, kind of reached another level. The defensive line looked great. Linebackers coming along. It was a showcase. It was a glorified scrimmage with 12 plays getting called. It wasn't 300 yards from your quarterback against the scout team like we saw in some other guys, but a high level of football, and I left being rather pleased with it. But definitely some spots you could see, especially like James mentioned, receiver. Maybe you could stand to add somebody out of the portal.
Yeah, the Penn State wide receiver, Keandre Lambert-Smith, he knows his craft. He knows what he's doing. He's not the body type of Keon Coleman. He's not a big physical guy that has he will play in the NFL. I have little doubt there, but he's not the force that Keon Coleman is, the physical type specimen and an impact player to that degree, or at least he hasn't shown that. And I've seen him play quite a bit at Penn State. So we might as well transition right there because Florida State's late to the transfer portal party. And that is one of the guys out there that at least I've seen that Florida State seems to have some interest in. Again, it's Keandre Lambert-Smith, everyone, Penn State wide receiver, caught 53 balls last year, 4 touchdowns. CJ West is a defensive lineman from Kent State who has a long list of Power 5 visits coming up. I've seen that name. And now I'm drawing a blank on anyone else that may be connected to FSU.
You're talking about the wide receiver position, just in general.
Just in general.
Simeon Barrow, D tackle. That's you have a couple linebackers. I mean, right now they've got the guys that they have an idea of. There'll be more people entering the portal here coming up soon. But one, I know I'm not going to use your platform to bash people, but I do know that a lot of people have used this portal, the spring portal, as the boogeyman. I mean, Josh Pate said this is going to be one of the most crazy, and not just Josh Pate, those other ones said that too. It's going to be the craziest spring portal we've ever seen. Not crazy at all. Like, what was crazy? Now, won't lie. Saban retiring made it crazy, made winter a lot crazier than what we thought, as well as Harbaugh leaving to go to the NFL for Michigan State. But I think at a certain point, we're going to have to adapt to the new norm, and people got to stop being afraid. But if you don't get what you need to get in the fall, in that winter portal, this spring portal, looking for that Keon Coleman is really trying to catch lightning in a barrel. But I always express to Florida State fans, don't be like how I don't know how you got. George is younger, you're a little older than me, Mark. But I remember when I was in elementary school, the new girl that transferred in was always prettier than the girls that were already there. And the reality is the girls that are there, that new girl ain't no more pretty. She might be ugly or she's just new. You didn't come up with her. You don't know anything about her. So everything in the portal that, just comes from a P5, like I've yet to see anybody just say, you know what? I need a Penn State wide receiver. Like, let me get this Penn State. Penn State really dials it up. Like, it just throws the ball very good. Now, if you told me some Ohio State guys at the portal, all right, man, they got to do a pretty good job over there with recruiting wide receivers. So I think a lot of FSU fans are just in this thing where I don't think we even know how to be happy winning. And I'm not satisfied with anything, but like at least I'm looking for upgrades. My perfect example, right now, I got a brand new TV. Mark, I went and bought me a 70, too big for my room, but I'm going to figure it out. I bought a 75-inch TV. I went from a 55-inch, gave them 55-inch to my grandma, 75-inch. I wasn't like, I gotta have a brand new. In order for me to be fulfilled in life, I gotta get a new TV. No, I went, found a good deal. Said, this is pretty all right. I'll buy this. I can afford it. Let's move forward. Like, that's how you're supposed to be when you're winning. We're winning, but we're like, oh, our offensive line stinks because of a scrimmage that we don't have any that most fans don't have any context in it. If our offense ran for 400 yards on our D line, on our defense, then I would be very concerned. If our wide receivers demolished our DBs, I'd be concerned. If our DBs just made our wide receivers not do anything, I'd be concerned. If our D-line just destroyed and folded up our O-line, I'd be concerned. But what we saw was what happens when iron sharpens iron. You saw big plays, but you saw a lot of stalemates. You saw plays to be made and on both sides of the ball. And I think that's what constitutes a very good team. Now, do we have a Peter Warrick at wide receiver or E.G. Green or Kez McCormick? I don't think so yet. But do I think Malik Benson could be that? Sure. We'll know more once the games get played. But I do know this. Our secondary is really, really good. And they consistently shut it down, but there were plays to be made by a bunch of guys. So I don't need us to go get 10 guys out of the portal. We're not, which is ironic that we were bashed so much for using the portal. But when you look at some of our rivals, they're requesting 2 running backs out of the portal, another quarterback, 2 wide receivers. And I'm like, y'all went from telling us about high school development to saying you dang near need a brand new team in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly get the indication that about 75 to 80% of these guys in the portal were pushed or nudged out the door by their coaching staffs because they're guys that have, had 1 start last year or played special teams, had 6 tackles. Those sorts of numbers are pretty common from these guys. But there's been 8 or 10 guys that are obviously star players that can play anywhere, and a couple of them have already been taken. And so we shall see what Florida State is able to do in the transfer portal and how much they want to make a move there. But it is funny that Mike Norvell would take criticism on one end of the spectrum, then the next offseason take some criticism and some heat from his fan base on the other end of the spectrum for not being aggressive enough in the transfer portal. Well, if you do it right, then a year later, or if you take them right out of high school, 3 or 4 years later, they show up at the NFL draft. And that's what we're going to take in starting on Thursday night. This is my favorite off the field event in sports, the NFL draft. Love it. Cannot get enough of it. My blessed mom, she did the best she could, and I have no complaints with the way mom raised me, and especially since there was a time, believe it or not, when the NFL draft was during the week. It was like on a Tuesday afternoon when ESPN first opened, I'm talking 1979, 80, 81. Mom would let me stay home and watch the NFL draft. Skip school, stay home, watch the NFL draft. It's like
That's
a 10-year-old.
That's a solid mom.
Yeah, she would be your perfect attendance. Otherwise, your grades are in line. Hey, stay home. I have no idea what this is. What you're making such a big deal about. It doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. Stay home.
Your mom, my mom could have taken lessons from your mom. It sounds like me begging to stay up for those Monday night Raws before school the next morning every once in a while. Well, it's like my bedtime was worked out. I had it worked out. Okay, you can stay up till 10 to watch Raw, but every once in a while, Stone Cold shows up with The Rock on a regular Monday night show, and it goes till 10:30. She'd be like, okay, 10 o'clock, go to bed. So thankfully my stepdad was around every once in a while to be like, let the kid watch Stone Cold. They're throwing beers out of out of the stands. Come on. But I digress. No, the draft is huge. Going to be a lot of fun. Going into this thing, the Noles just absolutely destroyed the combine. And the closer and closer we get to the draft, guys just moving up the board. I think there's 7 guys that could possibly go, in the top 100 picks in the draft, according to like Power Football Focus and stuff like that. But you got Jared Verse, who's a consensus first round pick. Braden Fisk, who I was lucky enough to meet at the spring game this weekend. He's slowly but surely working his way in there. Jerrion Jones, looking at being a second round pick. Keon Coleman, lost a little bit with his running as opposed to a Jerrion who, shot up the board, but he's still going to be somewhere in there, second, third round pick, if I had to guess. Fabian Lovett, you go across the board. I believe it's 17 guys we have that are eligible overall, a dozen invited to the combine. You got a guy like Akeem Dent, who's taken several top 30 NFL visits, who didn't even get, invited to the combine. He ends up running a sub 4.40 at his pro day. It's a pretty beautiful thing. I don't think I mentioned Renardo Green, another guy who's going to be a second, again, third round pick, in my opinion, just a beast at cornerback. But yeah, I could go on and on. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's been a long time since Florida State has had this many guys in the draft. You go back to that, I believe it was the 2012 draft was the first one, but 3 drafts in a row. Jimbo Fisher had, I believe it was like 12 guys, then 8, then another 12, something like that. He ends up breaking the record, 3-year record for Florida State, 29 guys drafted. Florida State, Mike Norvell, kind of like what James is alluding to, people being upset and complaining with what's going on. Like, he's on track to have a shot to break that thing. We'll see how many guys get drafted this year, but no, there's going to be at least 5+ next year, and who knows, we could get into 30+ guys here in the next 3 years. So really excited to just get it started, see who goes first round and go from there.
Who's supposed to go after Verse?
Probably Keon or Fisk.
Yeah, before the combine and all, it was going to be Keon. But what do you think? I think Fisk probably jumps him now. What do you think, James?
I think everybody's starting to trend back up on Keon. I still think Keon's drafted in the first round. I think, Fisk would be a reach for somebody to get in the first round. He will be there early. He will be gone early in the second, though. But I think both of them are guys who won't be there. Who, if they don't go in the first round, they'll be done. They'll be gone early, round 2.
Is there anybody on the FSU board that you think is undervalued, who will be a better pro than what he's projected to be right now?
I think Renardo Green or Jerrion Jones. I think actually there's a great. I'm gonna read this first though, Mark, if you don't mind. It's a phenomenal graphic. I think I downloaded it. I hope I downloaded it. So many good stuff. I love these stats guys, man. These new stat guys are pretty darn good, man. Stuff that I would have never thought about. They're getting after it. Dang, I thought I had it. Is it Pete Thamel? I'll find it. But the point is that everybody's talking about Thomas and the other and Neighbors from out of LSU, but they're not talking about the guys who harassed them for the last 2 years and seemingly the only people who stopped them. That would be Renardo Green and Jerrion Jones. And one of the things they always talk about in the NFL, a lot of teams run zone, or they run multiple concepts, but they run a zone. But if you can run man, you can run zone. But it's harder. But it's guys who are zone corners typically got to be protected. You can't put them in a man scheme. So these guys are able to give a defensive coordinator some versatility. I also believe that because they're going to be drafted anywhere between rounds 3 and 5, they're going to be on a discount. So the first 4 years, they're going to be able to make it. They're going to make some quality improvements, and then all of a sudden, you're going to see them be able to get those big second contracts. Which again, that puts you into, if you make it the contract too, more than likely you're going to be an 8-year vet. I agree with Chris' nephew, Kalen DeLoach is just one of those guys that when you hear wherever he's going to go, they're going to get a great linebacker. But the only reason I don't speak of him as far as length of career, which I do believe he could do well, I just don't see how he doesn't have the prototypical size. That's the only reason. That's the only thing I would say about that. That's just me not trying to be biased. I think the world of D'Lo. The other person I'll say is Akeem Dent. Akeem Dent has he was a high value prospect. Played 5-6 years at Florida State. I don't remember if he got the COVID. I think he came in 2019, so he was with Tag. So he got that COVID year. I think that speed is going to be unparalleled. So those are the guys that I think are undervalued at this juncture right now. I mean, everybody else basically is really being spoken highly of. The guy that's going to surprise a lot of people, I don't know as a pro if he's going to surprise people. I think that he's just going to surprise people where he gets drafted. And that's going to be Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis is going to get drafted relatively high, consider how people talked about him and considering the injury that happened to him at the end of the season. But he's doing very good in his workouts right now. He's moving well. And he's had quite a few teams that are really haggling about where to draft him at. Because I think next year's draft class is not going to, at quarterback, isn't going to be as appealing as what people think.
Yeah, without a doubt. Jordan Travis, man. Somebody is going to be very lucky to get him. I can't wait to see where he goes, but I think you're right. I think there's this idea that he's like a 5th round, 6th round guy, but I would be not be shocked at all to see him jump off there 2nd, 3rd round, something like that, and go somewhere and really have a great NFL career. And we're definitely pulling for him. As far as guys, maybe from a college perspective that are kind of undervalued and maybe people don't realize how good of an NFL career he could have, I would go Jaheim Bell there, just because tight end is just so impossible to kind of project. I think it's one of the hardest ones. Like, what you do in college and high school has like little bearing on what you do in the NFL, just kind of that size and ability to make people miss and things like that. So really curious to see where Jaheim Bell does and where he fits in. I think he could have a really nice NFL career. And the only other guy I think we haven't mentioned is Trey Benson, who, as James alluded to, he's getting a ton of love. I think he's the top running back, on most people's boards going into the draft, which says a lot for him. Just not sure with the value on running back, how high he'll go. He's another one of these guys that you could see going in the 2nd round all day. Going to be really, really fun to see. But yeah, I think that's the main stuff I had on my mind there for that.
That seemed to be the first thing we heard from anybody after Jaheim Bell transferred from South Carolina to Florida State. Well, he doesn't have NFL type production at South Carolina. Maybe they can unlock that at Florida State, but this guy looks like an NFL player coming off the bus.
What the funny part about that is that, we have so many guys who are in the front office who are Seminoles. You don't realize that until you kind of get into the NFL coverage. But one guy told me that they don't even know why he transferred. Like, they're like, he's got a 3rd round grade now. Like, he goes and he runs what he's supposed to run. He's like, because he's not going to get any taller and get any bigger unless he runs like a 4.2 or 4.3. Like, his numbers are going to, like, he's going to be a 3rd or 5th round guy. But here's the chart I was looking at. Adam Schefter put it out there. Now, in the 1st round, since 1981? Excuse me, from 2000 to 2019. That's 20 drafts. Here's the hit rates. Like, basically guys who are bust. There's been 11 centers drafted in the 1st round. 12 centers drafted. 11 hit, 1 bust. So that's 92% hit rate.
Hey, James, before you continue, how is he defining a hit?
I get that's a great. I'll read this. Based on whether that player's second contract, they made it to a second contract. So only one player didn't make it to the second contract. That was a center. That is the only passing grade. Everybody else is 59%. The highest is 59%. Offensive tackle, 64 taken, 38 hit, 26 missed. Guard is at 50-50, 28 taken, 14 and 14. Linebacker, 48%, 24 have been good, 26 have been not so good. 56 quarterbacks have been taken. So every time you hear this is a can't miss prospect at 1st round, the 46% of them make it to the second contract, and that's not even considering that doesn't mean they were good. Hell, Blake Bortles got a second contract. He was a 1st round pick. So did the other one. Two Jaguar quarterbacks made it that far. Jameis Winston got a second contract, and he hasn't been anywhere near what people projected them to be. Defensive end, 104 have been taken. That's a 44% hit rate. 46 hit, 58 missed. D tackle, 60 have been taken. 24 have hit, 36 have missed. Only 27 DB cornerbacks have hit. 44 have been missed. Running backs, 18 have hit, 30 have missed. And again, that includes Leonard Fournette, who's clearly people don't believe he did what he was supposed to do. Safeties, 14 have hit, 27 have missed. Tight end, 8 have hit, 16 have missed. Wide receivers, 21 have hit, 56. That's the worst percentage is the wide receivers at 26%. So when guys are listening to this and they're watching, oh my goodness, this guy is a can't miss prospect, just realize statistics state that they're going to miss. Like they're not going to be anywhere near as good. And I always tell people, don't read last year's NFL draft. Go read the 10 years ago, read 20 years ago, and see how many of those guys you actually remember making a play that you can that you can go tell your kids about. Like I read through one of the lists and I'm like, yo, I don't remember who that person was. And it's just kind of one of those things, man.
Now, while that's a great exercise to go through to see the level of accuracy by these NFL general manager, it would be interesting to see that statistic for every round to see at least if they hit the first round better than the second, better than the third, because then somebody would have to go through some kind of calculation, and this would be way beyond me to figure out what is the percentage of players that would receive a second contract to see how high should that percentage be? How much are they truly missing by?
That's fair. I think obviously it's the reason why some teams are better than others. Obviously, the Seahawks had an incredibly high hit rate when they were going through their Legion of Boom. I mean, it's probably like streaky as well, but 2.5 years, average year in the NFL, average career in the NFL. So like it's hard to pick. It's why I always try to tell people that at covering it made me realize it even more. It's just two different games. College, while the fear is the money may make it more entertainment because you don't want to invest in people that are getting hurt, but it's still more of the pure game closer to high school. Each level you get up, the less it is real football, and that's always been that way. The NFL game, it's entertainment. It's entertainment that is being played by really, really good athletes, but it is not the same brand of football. If it was the same brand of football, I would just shift to having a heavy run game and playing good defense, because a good run game and a good defense is going to win you a lot of football games. But that's also not going to get a lot of people watching, not a lot of eyes, and it wouldn't be what is it? I think they're at like $15 billion a year entity in which it is. I'm probably undervaluing it right now, but it's the reason why it's that way.
Yeah, the history of rules in the NFL in the Super Bowl era has been the defense is dominated. They needed the offense to catch up and surpass the defense. So they loosened up the rules for the offense. They did that in like the early 70s. They did that in 1978. They've done that like about every 10 or 12 years. Oh, the defense once again catches up to the offense. The offenses aren't scoring enough. We've got to loosen it back up. Got to give advantage to the offense because people want to be entertained by scoring. Great stuff here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by, everyone. See the Amazon links in the description section of the videos. And here's the deal. I'll tell you a quick story, folks. I'm on the Amazon link the other day. I'm shopping for stuff for my set. No, I'm not on the Amazon link. I just go to Amazon. I'm just doing my shopping. I filled up my cart. I'm ready to roll. I got my card, doing the whole deal. And then I thought, I didn't use the Amazon link. Number one, I can't look people in the eye and tell them use the Amazon link when I didn't use the Amazon link. Number two, I'm going to make back 3, 4, 5, 6% of this. So I might as well use the Amazon link. Well, I went directly to the Amazon link, and guess what? I thought I was going to have to reshop everything. No, my cart was still full, still ready for the checkout. So it went completely transparent right from whatever link I was using to the Amazon link in the description section. Still had me signed in, still the cart full, ready to roll. So it just shows you that it is transparent to what you do. It's going to recognize your account and everything. So please use the Amazon link in the description section. And if I am lying to you, if I am incorrect, please tell me. But every experience from every viewer has been, yeah, Mark, it worked exactly like that. Things are good. So please use the Amazon link. It helps build the channel. James, I got to say, when you walked away from the set a few minutes ago, I thought, you're able to do that now, and we don't think you ever left. Just you got a permanent smile on your face, though.
Life is good. So I mean, it's shout out to Chris. I think Chris's wife was sporadic. She made the logo. I mean, that made that AI image of me. I'm much more handsome as a cartoon than I am in real life. So I like
Same
that.
here. Appreciate you, Chandra. Thank you. She hooked all of us up.
Den Media Group, James. What's the word there?
Yeah, man, we're getting close. 370 subs away from 6,000. Once we get to 6,000, we will be giving away $500 as well as different prizes to our members. So we'll have 2 cash giveaways with that. We had an incredible sit down. Chris was there with me as well, with Tramel Jones, class of 2025 quarterback commit. A lot of stuff been up in the air with him going to on a visit to the University of Florida. So we chopped it up and talked to him about that. Also, we had a good show. We're doing our different things. So hopefully some big announcements will be made here in the next couple of weeks. But we're trying to just grow that channel. And as the channel grows, we'll give away more stuff. Once I get to 10,000 subs, I'm gonna give away. I got my seats today. So it's section 121, row 14, seats 7th to 12th. So once we if I get to 10,000 subs before football season, I'll be giving away a pair of tickets and a parking pass to lot 19 for a lucky listener. So check us out. If it's good, if it's some other things that you want to hear or some other content, then please feel free to get at me.
George, the Renegade Report.
We just got back in the saddle. Big weekend out at the spring games. So thanks to everybody that made it out there. We had a blast meeting everybody, spending time getting to be in the same place with Chris and James and the Garnet and Old crew and Freddie, who was cooking, and Lisa and Adrian, who were helping do everything. It was just a ton of fun being with everybody, getting to meet all the different people that are sub to the channels and stuff. But as far as the channel, got back in the saddle, like I said. Jen was flying across the country, so she didn't make yesterday's episode, but you can get over there and check out me and Doug Rohan talking about the very latest, kind of the stuff we were talking about at the beginning of the show with the court case, and then kind of my review of the entire spring game weekend and everything that was there. And of course, we'll be back Friday and Sunday as usual. So far, I think we've got Lonnie Pryor coming through Sunday planned. Not sure exactly what we're going to do Friday, but it's right here on the YouTube at the Renegade Report. You can get over there. Please subscribe. We've got memberships available, all that good stuff, as well as renegadereport.substack.com. You can go there for your audio only downloads and things of that nature. We do some articles every once in a while too. So go check all that out. And that's it. We're going for 3,000 subscribers. We're about at 2,400. So we got a ways to go till we can get to that 3,000 mark. So just steady coming on here every week. We appreciate you having us on and keeping it rolling, trying to take that next step.
We got about 120 on the line. So if you just joined us, check out the rest of the show. So you just rewind all the way back. You watch the rest of the show. And also keep in mind that our intent here is to bring together the best in Florida State football. But we only do this once a week. So if you want the deep dive, if you want the real scoop, daily basis, all the time, it's James, Den Media Group. It's George, the Renegade Report. It's Chris, who couldn't be here. He's stuck in traffic, but Spear Addicts. These guys make this Florida State. I would be shutting down this Florida State channel in days probably if these guys weren't around, or I'd come on here and just be fielding questions and trying to hold up the ship and probably be talking about Florida State to the Big Ten every other day because that's all I would be able to talk about. So these guys make all this work for us. We've done it for 260 shows. Also, a shout out to Logan Robinson. He broke down all the positions with us, and he's one of our first guys to launch this show as well. So we appreciate Logan and Jason Parker as well. But these two, along with Chris, keep it rolling each and every week. So please join them on their respective sites and support them. Like and sub over there as well. George, we appreciate you. James, you're the best. We appreciate you. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much for making this happen.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you,
Mark.
Mark.